Hi, this is Laurie Power, Director of Evangelization and Discipleship at Christ the Redeemer Parish, and this is Talking Saints. I am here today with my co-host, Peter Sanchez, reporter for the Catholic Star-Herald. How you doing, Pete?
I'm doing well, Laurie. How are you?
I'm good. I am happy to be talking about our saint of the day. She's a modern-day saint, but not as well known, I think, as some. So I think it'll be good to share her story.
I think so, too. And I'm going to give a shout out to my goddaughter, who was confirmed about 2 years ago and actually picked this saint as her confirmation saint.
Really? That's interesting.
Did. Yeah. And I was surprised because I didn't. Excuse me?
Do you know why she chose her?
I think she was just interested in her story. And so just my goddaughter has been in my thoughts researching this saint because she probably knows more about her than I do. So
I could have called her, see what she could share.
Well, I'll let her know to listen to this or before this airs. I'll make sure but she'll probably know it all. We should have had her on thinking about it next time.
There you go.
So yeah, who are we talking about today, Laurie?
We are talking about Saint Teresa Benedicta of the Cross, who is also known as Saint Edith Stein. She was a convert from Judaism to Catholicism and later became a Carmelite and ultimately died in a Nazi concentration camp. So she had quite a life and quite a story. So I am excited to be talking about her today. Definitely. So
me too.
So she was born. Yeah, I'll start off, share a little bit about her early life. She was born on October 12th, 1891, which that date happened to coincide with her family's celebration of Yom Kippur, which is the Jewish Day of Atonement. Her father died when she was very young, when she was just 2 years old, and she ultimately, as an adolescent, gave up the practice of her Jewish faith. And her mother was a very faithful Jewish woman, so that really upset her mom that she was no longer practicing their faith. She was very gifted, though, very intellectually gifted, and she began to study philosophy. And she still had really no interest in sort of religious studies or embracing any sort of religion. But she did meet, in the course of her studies, she did meet Christians whose lives she really admired. So I think that was that planted the seed a little bit in her life. Do you want to take over there, Pete, or shall I keep going?
Well, I can mention something. You're talking about planting the seeds. One of the things, she was a prolific writer. And one of the things she wrote talking about her experience was, and I'll quote her words here. She says, "I saw someone coming straight from the busy marketplace into this empty church, as if she was going to have an intimate conversation. It was something I never forgot." And then she goes on to say, "There have been people who believed that a sudden change had occurred within them, and that this was a result of God's grace." So she, I think this was part of it, and she converted.
The story of her conversion is kind of interesting. So she went on to study. She received a doctorate. Before that, though, World War I hit, and she actually served as a nurse in an Austrian field hospital.
Yeah.
So she took a hiatus from studies and then did return to the academic world. And she wrote her thesis on the phenomenon of empathy, which was very interesting to me. She was interested in the idea of religious commitment, but hadn't actually made a commitment herself. Not until 1921, she was visiting friends. And while she was there, they happened to have an autobiography of Saint Teresa of Avila. And she spent the entire night reading it. And then when she had finished the book, she said, "This is truth." So she knew after reading the autobiography of this Carmelite nun, Saint Teresa. I don't think we've done Saint Teresa of Avila yet, right, Pete? We'll have to put her on the list.
I think I don't recall.
Because we talked about St. John of the Cross, who also was very influential to Edith Stein, but we'll have to definitely get the other Teresa into the lineup soon, certainly.
Yes.
So anyway, she read her autobiography, knew immediately this is truth. On January 1st of the next year of 1922, she was baptized. And she had a desire, I think, to enter Carmel pretty early, but her spiritual directors, the priest in her life, said, no, you probably want to wait a little bit for that. That's a big step. It was also very difficult for her mother, who just could not understand how she would give up her Jewish faith and that she had become Christian. So that was a challenge, a personal challenge for her in her life, definitely.
And she, and this was in 1922. Well, 1922, she was baptized.
Right.
And then, so she entered she entered the convent on October 14th and then received the habit on April 15th, 1934. And now she was known as Saint Teresa Benedicta of the Cross. And then 4 years later, she took her perpetual vows. And who you just mentioned, St. John of the Cross, was actually printed on her picture, which was, and he said, henceforth, my only vocation is to love. And actually, her final work was devoted to this author. And she had, this 4 years, well, okay, so this is April 21st. She took her vows. On New Year's Eve, she was smuggled across the border into the Netherlands because Germany was coming. And the Nazis were coming, and she was taken to the Carmelite convent there. And on June 9th, 1939, she had an idea of what was coming. She said, even now, I accept the death that God has prepared for me in complete submission and with joy as being his most holy will for me. I ask the Lord to accept my life and my death, so that the Lord will be accepted by his people and that his kingdom may come in glory for the salvation of Germany and the peace of the world. And do you want to take it from there, Laurie? What happened?
Sure. So
when she was in the Netherlands?
Before she entered the convent, she said something interesting to the prioress of the Carmelite in Cologne. She said, human activity cannot help us, but only the suffering of Christ. It is my desire to share in it. So that would explain her religious name, that she was Teresa. Well, Teresa, of course, for Saint Teresa of Avila, because Teresa was so influential in her conversion. And then of the cross, because she had a great, profound desire to share in the suffering of Christ, because she felt that that was the only thing that could really help humanity, that could really change the world. So she gave herself completely to that. And it seems like the Lord accepted that gift. And she knew, she did have an idea of probably what was coming. She knew that she was possibly putting the sisters in Carmel in danger by her being there. So that's why she asked to be moved to Holland, as you mentioned. And then on August 7th, she was arrested along with her sister Rosa. And she said to Rosa, as they were being arrested, come, let us go and die for our people. So she knew what was coming when she was arrested, clearly. Apparently, the conditions even on the train to get to the concentration camp were absolutely horrendous. People died on the way there. And it was later written by another professor of Saint Teresa Benedicta of the Cross. This professor said, she's a witness to God's presence in a world where God is absent. So she took the love of God with her even into the concentration camp. And she died 2 days later. So after she was arrested, she was taken to Auschwitz, and then on August 9th, 1942, she died there. So
I have to say, Laurie, I got chills reading that note from Professor Nota talking about she's a witness in a world where God is absent, because I think it's so prevalent today, where God is so absent in a big part of the world, and we need to look to her as an example. And something else that speaking of, she took the name, and in 1941, she wrote to a friend who was also a member of the Carmelites. She said, one can only gain a scientia crucis, knowledge of the cross, if one has thoroughly experienced the cross. I've been convinced of this from the first moment onwards, and have said with all my heart, Ave crux spes unica. I welcome you, cross, our only hope. And she did have if you can say, a prophetic life.
I think so. That is
true. And is it something, so Laurie, have you known about Saint Teresa over the years?
I have. I'm not sure how I came to know her. Probably maybe on her feast day, or just came across something about her. But she does have a powerful story. I mean, she was a accomplished academic in her own right, and she gave that all up to enter the Carmel. She could have had she did for a few years have a very successful teaching career. And this was at a time where it was probably a very male dominated field in philosophy. And she was celebrated in that field. But she knew that God was calling her to follow him more closely, and particularly to embrace the cross. And I think she must have known it would have involved suffering. I mean, she was in the Carmel. So there's a film I forgot to mention. There's a film that was made about her. It's more than 20 years ago now. It's called The Seventh Chamber, which refers to the interior castle of Saint Teresa of Avila. And it's a foreign film, so it's kind of like an independent kind of artsy film. So it might not be everybody's cup of tea, but it does show the suffering she went through, leaving her family, entering Carmel. Her novitiate was not easy. Certainly at that time, there was quite a bit of suffering, just penance involved in being a Carmelite nun. And then when she was ultimately arrested, though she did, the way they portray that, she did enter it very peacefully, because she knew that seemed to be that was her path. That was how she was going to get to heaven. So,
and she had an idea of the faith. She had translated letters from Aquinas, and even wrote a book on the ideas of him. So she was very knowledgeable. And I think that might have, Aquinas is big philosophically. So I wonder if that part came first, where she was into philosophy, started reading Aquinas, and then got into the Catholic faith. I'm curious.
I think that actually came after her initial experience of Saint Teresa of Avila. So she just found Teresa's autobiography so moving, and that it was true, that she had to now commit to the Catholic faith, because she knew it was true. How could she walk away or ignore it,
Yeah.
So, and then she began to study Aquinas and taught philosophy and theology. So, yeah.
And I love how she said, too, when she wrote, when she needed to move on from Germany, she said, if I cannot go on here, there are no longer any opportunities for me. I'd become a stranger in the world. And I think maybe for some Catholics, they feel that way. This culture is increasingly secular. Those who practice the faith maybe can feel like strangers. So we need to follow. Again, we need to be like her and be a witness in this world where he is absent.
That's true. And some people are not called to the cloister. That was her path, to be a Carmelite. Yeah. But some of us are just called to stay in the world, those of us who are working in a secular.
That's a good point. You don't have to be. I mean, of course, being a priest, a religious, a nun is a wonderful calling. But you're right. You don't have to do that to evangelize.
Absolutely.
To be a light like she was.
Though I think what she would say is we do all have to embrace the cross, though, however it may come. And that's really what's going to change the world, how God is going to impact and save humanity. Yeah. We're certainly in a situation now in the world that we certainly need God. So I know there's a lot. I think Christians used to embrace penance a little bit more freely than we do now, and it's not really talked about as much. So just the idea of, offering things up or giving things up in union with the sufferings that Christ suffered, sharing in his sufferings, or willingly accepting whatever comes our way, not even looking for them. All of us have suffering just as part of our life. And she would say embracing that is how God is going to change you and change the world.
Easier said than done, but
that's true.
I pray for that. I pray to every day, I try to pray. Should we finish with
yes.
What do you think?
You have a prayer, her words, yes?
Yeah, I found something really beautiful that she wrote. Okay, and this is, and we'll just close with this on Saint Teresa Benedicta of the Cross on her feast day. Oh my God, fill my soul with holy joy, courage, and strength to serve you. Enkindle your love in me, and then walk with me along the next stretch of road before me. I do not see very far ahead, but when I have arrived where the horizon now closes down, a new prospect will open before me. and I shall meet with peace. Saint Teresa Benedicta of the Cross.
Pray for us.